moving very quickly, but like good, yeah.
I understand you decided probably wisely to take a gap year.
Yes, I was just discussing this with Ariane. Yeah.
How hard of a decision was that to make?
Oh, so difficult because like I've always been someone who's just wanted to just go and start now. I feel like I'm very, very much ready to start. But yeah, Yale's basically announced that all shows for 2020 to 2021 are going to be canceled, and like there's restrictions on rehearsals and things like that.
No.
So yeah, I just feel like everything I'd be doing for my major plus everything I'd be doing extracurricularly, I wouldn't be able to do. And I don't think I want to sacrifice that. So
No, that doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
That's disappointing. How are they doing in terms of their reopening plans?
Quite well. Like they want to open September and October with everyone, I think everyone on campus, and then I think after Thanksgiving, they're then online. But yeah.
And when did you make your decision? As soon as you heard that the shows were canceled?
I had been thinking about it for a while, just because also with visas and like logistics and things like that. But I actually submitted my deferral letter 2 days ago now. Yeah.
Okay.
So quite recently.
And was there a deadline? Did you have to do it by July 1st, basically?
No, I have till I think end of August. I don't know when the official deadline is, but yeah, I know some schools had like June 15th, that sort of thing, but yeah, it was fine.
Better to have some clarity and finality to this process.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good. Speaking of clarity, did you hear about Ariadne? Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Did you tell Daliya did you know about your ordeal and your absolutely incredible journey?
She did. So I was stuck in the States for 106 days, but I was only supposed to be there for 10 days.
Oh my gosh.
I left Dubai on March 9th, and then I came back just last Wednesday. So it's been stressful, but I'm so happy to be back. Yeah.
I like how you count the number of days. That's incredible. It's like prison sentence almost, right?
Yeah.
What was the hardest part, Ariadne, about being there, other than the time difference, I'm guessing, and dealing with, working in Dubai and being in California?
I just really miss like my friends in Dubai, and like I have a really close group of friends here. I think living like alone independently also, because I was in a hotel room with my parents. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, tough.
Stressful.
Incredible. Daliya, how are you staying busy nowadays?
I'm just trying to, I think I've been busy just like prepping things for the gap year and like having solid plans, which is like exciting to think about. But yeah, trying to get some writing done, trying to read constantly, that sort of thing. And also to stay in touch with friends, like Ariane said, like I think that's very important right now.
Are you seeing them outside, or are you just kind of doing digital?
I am in small groups, but like my friends, I have like very close friends from like summer programs and stuff, and we have been staying in contact through Zoom, so that's been really nice.
Very cool. And are you writing a screenplay now, or something else?
I'm trying to just like write here and there, nothing like cohesive yet, but yeah, I mean it's a good time to write. Like right now, there's a lot going on in the world, so
yeah. No, and you still have your two colleagues, right, that you collaborated with to go to the competition in LA?
Yes, yeah. One of them is here, and the other one is currently in Denmark. But I'm seeing the actress who's in the play still. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other plans to roll out a new production, or temporary on hold because of the situation?
On hold currently, yeah.
Very good. Very good. Interesting. Ariane, did you pick up any new hobbies while you were in the States, or how did you stay busy when you weren't working?
So I learned how to cook finally. Like I'm not a very good cook, but I learned how to cook a lot of Filipino and Spanish food. So
Good.
that was really good. I think that's about it. Like I took care of my grandpa. So those were like the two things that I did.
Amazing.
Yeah.
For Spanish food, did you learn how to cook paella or other
Yeah,
dishes?
I did. I cooked that with my mom. So it was really interesting. We both like seafood a lot, so we ate that like every week.
Amazing. Amazing, with little squid rings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. I think attendees are slowly filtering in. We still have maybe another couple minutes before we get started. So welcome everybody who's already here. We are just catching up, and we will we will be starting shortly. So thank you for joining. Excellent. Good. Daliya, how many of your other friends are taking a gap year, the ones who are going to the States or even the UK?
So one of my best friends who's also admitted early to Yale, she's taking a gap year, and we're doing some things together like throughout the gap year, which will be really nice. And then I have a couple friends from Dubai as well, going to the States. Mainly people going to the States, I'd say, taking gap years. Yeah.
And where are they attending? Where are they going to be enrolling in?
I have a lot of very close friends going to Brown, and quite a few of them have opted for a gap year. Yeah, and then like the other girl, like I said, going to Yale. So hopefully we'll see each other like throughout the year. I mean, it is a while, but
yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll see each other here in Dubai, and then
yes,
like you move to New England, Providence, and New Haven, maybe it's like an hour and 15 minutes or so. So it's an easy.
Yeah.
Did you visit Brown or no?
I did. Yeah. Last summer. Yeah, I visited.
What did you think of it?
I loved it. It was definitely like up there with one of the schools I really wanted to go to. I really liked it. Yeah.
But for performing arts, can't touch Yale, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess so.
Incredible. Very cool. Excellent. Well, I think, guys, it's now 5 o'clock, so maybe Nermeen, do we have your blessing to formally start the webinar? Waiting for a thumbs up for you. Thank you very much, Nermeen. Thank you for organizing. Welcome, everyone, to our last Ivy Insider webinar that will feature a senior. We will have one more webinar next week featuring actually a graduating student, also from Dubai College, Daliya, your alma mater now, who has graduated from Johns Hopkins. But today we are very privileged to have Daliya Habib with us, who will be studying at Yale. She has an amazing journey, an incredible story, an incredible personal story, and true talent for performing arts, which I think will be incredibly wonderful to learn more about and to discuss. We're also here with Ariane Kalingo, recently back from the US, where she was stranded for 106 days. Welcome. Happy to see you again. Happy you made it out. Thank you, Ariane. Ariane was Daliya's educational consultant. Ariane is a graduate of Georgetown and the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and worked very closely with Daliya throughout this process. This is her second Ivy Insider webinar. She did a fantastic job on the first time, and I'm sure is going to do a fantastic job today. So welcome, Ariane, welcome, Daliya, and welcome everybody who's attending. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you. I encourage all of the attendees to ask questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will have an interactive Q&A session at the end of the discussion. So I hand the reins over to you, Ariane, and to you, Daliya.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. As Peter mentioned, my name is Ariane. I graduated from Georgetown and Harvard, and it was such a pleasure and a joy working with Daliya throughout the whole application process. She was very enthusiastic, very hardworking, very organized, and also very responsible. And I'm very happy that she will be attending Yale, which is the rival school to where I went to school, but still a very good school. So let's begin. Daliya, can you tell us a bit about yourself and like what you'll be studying at Yale, and a few of your extracurriculars that you've done throughout high school as well?
Sure. So like Peter and Ariane already said, my name's Daliya Habib. I just recently graduated from Dubai College, and I was admitted early action to Yale University in December of 2019. I have now decided to defer, so I will be in the class of 2025. But I am planning on studying theater, philosophy, or film. I haven't quite decided from the three yet, maybe double majoring. And most of my extracurriculars linked to probably all, I'd say, all of the like quite arts related and humanities related extracurriculars. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that the deferral, like that sort of, that decision to defer was really hard for you. So why don't you walk us through like that decision? How did you come to make it? How long did it take for you to make that decision? And what did you have to do in order to defer?
Sure. So I was just saying earlier to Peter and to Aryan that I definitely felt like I was someone who was ready to just like start university at this stage. I was very excited to just like begin as soon as like high school ended. But after reflecting a bit more on it, I feel like taking a year out is probably the best decision because mainly because Yale has already announced that shows and performances for 2020 to 2021 are going to be canceled. And there are limitations on like rehearsal spaces and meeting obviously big groups of people to rehearse. And I feel like that is something that is quite, like quite important to who I am and like what I sort of envision my Yale experience to be like. So I decided to defer because I think I'd rather hold out that year and then do some more things in like the film and theater sort of realm, and then start Yale with, I guess, a more complete like experience. And the time to reflect really and like take in who I want to sort of become while at university. Yeah, that's sort of my reasoning.
Great. And I know that we worked on your deferral email together, and it was so thorough. Like you had like a plan for each month. Was it difficult for you to come up with that plan?
I think, I mean, it's difficult right now because obviously I think you have to be flexible given that there's like a pandemic going on. But I think I knew sort of the things I wanted to do. Like I knew I wanted to work on like a film set at some stage. I knew I wanted to do some work with the National Youth Theatre, which I can talk a little bit about later on in the interview. But yeah, I sort of knew that this was a time for me to do, I guess, more professional like experience sort of things with the time, like longer time frames to do so without the restrictions of like being at school or being at university.
Okay. So going back to like talking about your university list and which ones you applied to, how many universities did you end up applying to and which ones?
So I only ended up applying to 3. I applied to Yale single choice early action, so I couldn't apply anywhere else. And then in the interim between applying to Yale and then hearing back, I had to apply. I applied to Stanford and to USC because they had art supplements, so my deadline was slightly earlier. But once I was admitted to Yale, I ended up withdrawing my other applications. So I did still work on my other essays, but in the end, I only heard back from Yale. Yeah.
And how did you go about like with your university research?
So I definitely think I learned the most through my own like independent research, which is sort of just done through university websites, things like that. I did use, there was a Hale document actually that sort of has questions bullet pointed that you can use as I think it's a great starting place to sort of compile research. And I think that just helped me understand what I was looking for in a school. Like I quickly realized I wanted to be like at a liberal arts institution. I saw myself more on the East Coast. And yeah, I think it was just a great way to like imagine yourself at a school, which is always important when applying. But it also allowed me to collect sort of the more like niche, quirky traditions or like elements of each school that I think definitely help with like essay writing. So that definitely came through like my own research. Yeah.
And we'll definitely talk about your essays later on. I would say that your essays were like they were really my favorites because they were very creative. So she'll mention that she wrote like a haiku as one of them.
Oh yeah.
But before I ask about that, I want to know more about like how your expectations changed through the process of doing your university research, building your college list. Did it change like your expectations?
You know what? So I did a tour of a couple of universities between the summer of like junior and senior year. And I think often what happens when you do these tours is like the information can kind of blend because like you do have like officials trying to sell the school to you essentially. But I think doing independent research beforehand really helped with like knowing those like little unique facts about the schools when I was actually there visiting. And I think it's actually great to be able to see the universities. It definitely helps with like getting a greater perspective of what they're like and like you said, like expectations, things like that. Obviously now I know that's going to be difficult, but I'm pretty sure a lot of schools are doing virtual tours,
Virtual tours, yeah.
which is
Mhm.
like a great alternative. But I also think watching videos online is super helpful. Like I definitely did that and watching like vlogs of students,
I
just
know you
because I
did.
think, yeah, I watched loads. I just think it's really
Um,
helpful because you're hearing the perspective of a student. So it's not someone who's
right.
necessarily trying to like sell a school to you or tell you why it's like the best. It's just someone speaking about like their experiences and showing you like maybe like a day in the life kind of thing. I found those things really
Yeah.
helpful. So yeah, I definitely recommend doing that.
And I know you told me like one of the videos you watched, he's actually a theater major currently at Yale, and you've
Yeah.
connected, right?
Yeah, so he actually at the
So
end
cool.
of one of his videos said, like reach out to me if you want any help with, reading through essays, that kind of thing. So I reached out because obviously like studying the same sort of thing at Yale, and I asked him to just read through and like let me know what he thinks. And he was super
Right.
positive, like really helpful. So yeah, I'd say try and connect as well if you can right now.
Mhm. So along with like the college tours and virtual college tours, there's also newsletters. Did you sign
Yeah.
up for the newsletters, and which ones did you sign up for? And would you recommend signing up for newsletters?
Yeah. So I did sign up for newsletters. I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
I signed up for every school that was on my list, which I think was like 10 or 12.
Right.
I think it's just good to show like demonstrated interest like throughout the application process because schools
Right.
definitely do look at that. And it's also a great way to just like stay in the loop of what's happening at like each of these universities. Not only just for like essay material, but also yeah, just to understand like what's sort of happening at the schools. I think it's like very important to sign up.
I know that you mentioned like the info sessions briefly. Did you find those helpful?
I actually did because I think from what I can remember, I did try and go speak to the admissions officers running those info sessions after, just because it's good to like, I guess, make that connection, though it is like brief and,
Right.
there are a lot of kids that they are seeing. It's good to ask them questions that you want to ask one-on-one,
Right.
which actually now I think there are more opportunities to do that and have sort of Zoom call sessions with admissions officers for some
Yeah.
of these universities. So yeah, I think that definitely helps.
And I know when we met yesterday, you mentioned that there's like a Yale podcast now. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I think this has just happened recently, like during quarantine, but
Mm-hmm.
Yale's admissions office has started a podcast. I think it's called Inside the Admissions Office. I think it's just called that. But
Right.
if I had this time last year, I would be like so much more calm because it really just is like a podcast that it's not tips and tricks to get in, it's not that kind of thing. It's just admissions officers demystifying the admissions process and like humanizing what the admissions officers do. And I think
Right.
they like I'm listening to it now because I just think it's interesting like hearing about these kind of things. But it really just makes you realize that these are people trying to connect with you as a person. Like that's all that
Right.
admissions process is really about. It doesn't make it seem like this big daunting like institution reading like your essays that you've written. So I think yeah, that things like that definitely help.
Okay. So along with like the podcasts and like the videos online, you could also find a lot of blogs online. What do you think about blogs such as like College Confidential and like Reddit? Do you think those are helpful or harmful when you're like in that college application period?
So I think I personally found those kind of things slightly harmful. I think I was just
Okay.
very
Mhm.
cautious about checking Reddit or checking. I tried not to check College Confidential. Every now and then, like I
Right.
would, but try not to, because I think what tends to happen is you get students who are sort of like, do you think I'm going to get in? I have like a 36 ACT, 1600 SAT, and like here are my 7 subject tests with all perfect scores.
Mhm.
And it can be stressful to read that sort of thing because I definitely felt like I was in a position where I felt like how could I compete with kids who have those kind of scores? But I think you have to remember that number one, people are not going to be putting those scores up on the internet unless they have like those really really high grades.
Mhm.
And secondly, you like the testing section of the application is so slim in comparison to like the rest of the picture of who you are trying to be and trying to like portray, I guess. So it's not, yeah, I would try not to check those kind of things. Instead, checking blogs by like students from these schools is so much more helpful. Like reading about students' experiences or like specific like dinners they attended with professors, those kinds of things give you a much greater insight into what those universities are like. And they often tend to give you like really useful advice for applying. So I would steer away from College Confidential and Reddit and more towards like student blogs. Yeah.
So what would you say is like the best piece of advice that you picked up either from a blog or a vlog that you watched or that you read?
So I watched a video where this guy, I think he was admitted to Yale and to Stanford. He basically had said that his goal with his essays was to be able to have like his entire collection of all the essays and to cross out his name wherever his name was, you know, in any of the essays and just drop them like anywhere in his school. And he sort of said that if any student in my high school could pick up these essays, read all of them and say, okay, this belongs to like me, or like in my case, like I applied this and I was like, if any student could pick up my essays, read them, be like, this is definitely Daliya Habib's, I've done my job. Like that sort of, I think thinking about that and having that awareness was so useful when writing essays, because you really like, I'll talk about this later, but like the importance of like your voice shining through in these essays is like unbelievably important. Like I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. And what do you think like some of the challenges were that you faced during the application process?
So I know that you said in the beginning that I'm quite organized, but I feel like I'm someone who sometimes like can struggle with my organization. I think I just get overwhelmed very easily, and this process can obviously become overwhelming. But you know, I think in that sense, I was very lucky to be paired with you, Ariane. Like I've told you this multiple times, but I just think like you were very much on top of deadlines, things like that. Like we definitely set deadlines earlier than when they were actually due to just make sure like things were done. Making sure like I had art supplements ready for schools that I needed them for, that sort of thing in terms of like logistics. But then I think also a big challenge that I've realized when speaking to other friends too is that there can be a lot of self-doubt with, you know, the college application process. I know like I arrived back last summer, I arrived back in Dubai at the beginning of August. And I was like, okay, I have this time to do all my essays, get these things done. And I think it got to the point where I was like quite upset. I wouldn't say obsessive, but I was quite upset that like I really wanted to get in, but obviously there is this limbo of like not knowing and like being in this sort of unknown area of you literally don't know. It's so ambiguous, the whole process. But I think a huge part of the college application process is learning to find like sort of stability and also like the faith within yourself that like it can happen for you. And by the time I think I'd submitted my essays, I'd sort of realized, submitted my application, I mean, I'd sort of realized that, you know what, if it happens, then like amazing. But if it doesn't, it just means that like it wasn't the best place for me. Like there's something better waiting at another school, and that's okay. I think really the biggest thing is like just having a healthy mindset throughout the application like season, because it's really difficult. It's like definitely easier said than done. But yeah, try not to make it a draining process. And also don't forget what you've done in like the 4 years to get to where you are now, and like have that faith that it'll work out. Yeah.
It's really good advice. And, you know, time management is also, like, as you mentioned, it's very important. I think we literally only had like 2 or 3 weeks just to work on your Yale application.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
Yeah. I remember, I think we met like a few times each week. I don't know if we met every day, but we did meet quite a lot in 3 weeks just to finish your application. And obviously you pulled it off and like you were able to get in. So yeah, I'm very happy. Do you think, what do you think was your favorite part of the Yale application?
I definitely feel like I loved writing the essays. I know I'm going to have a bias saying that because like I am like a writer, so I find these things super fun. But I try to make like huge mind maps for each of my essays and just like get everything out on paper before I started writing. And I definitely really, really enjoyed that because I realized through reading like other people's essays, mainly through there's loads of documents that Hale has of example essays from students that definitely were very helpful. But I realized quite quickly that you can write about literally anything, like anything that's significant to you, you can write about. And I think once I had realized that, I was like, this is like amazing. Like it's really the essays are really the only point in the application where you are speaking directly to the admissions committee. Like, of course, letters of recommendation are important, but that's like another person's voice about you. Like testing, that sort of thing, stats are important, but that's more about like how you work in the test or like your work ethic. But essays, I think, are a place where you can be so authentic. You can just be super creative. And it literally, you can talk about, I think, I literally can't stress this enough. You can talk about anything in a way that's like unique and individual to you, and it'll stand out. If you are being authentic and if you are being genuine, you'll be like, you can tell. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed doing that. Yeah.
So you mentioned a few times, like you can talk about anything like in these essays, like what are some sample essays that were so interesting to you that you read either through Hale or online that stood out to you that were like the most unique?
So this actually links to my favorite part of the like essays, which were Yale's short takes, which are like, there were 4 prompts, I think. They were 35 words, like tiny little essays. And I had read a couple online, and there was a guy who wrote about a sandbox for what inspires him. He literally wrote about like playing in a sandbox. And that really stuck with me. And I was actually like, this doesn't link to, it's not about writing about your achievements or about your awards. There are other places to do that. I think these essays were definitely a place where I felt like I could let my personality shine through, and write about things that, still linked to my extracurriculars, but I hadn't really had the chance to speak about elsewhere. Like Ariane said, I did a haiku for one of these short takes. I wrote about like, some of them were really fun. There was one about what course would you teach at Yale, like those kind of things. I thought those were just a really great outlet to be super creative, but they did take a long time. Like they definitely took as long. I feel like I took as long on those essays as my 250-word essays, just because like they require a lot of thought. But yeah, again, like just lots of fun.
Which do you think is your favorite out of like all the Yale essays?
Oh, I think maybe there was a 250-word essay about like intellectual vitality, which I think every school kind of asks, like, what academically are you interested in? I spent a long time trying to plan this and make it like very, very intensely academic. And I was going to do it about like philosophy or like certain philosophers. I ended up doing it about dreaming, like just about dreams, because that is, I think it's something that everyone can kind of relate to. Like most people dream. But I wrote about it in a way where it then linked to philosophy and reading and philosophy that I've done. And then I linked it to film, and then I linked it to my experiences in like shooting films and using sort of oniric film theory, which is like a form of film theory that mimics like sort of the experience of a dream. And I just found that really interesting. And I thought I wrote about it in a way that was like quite unique. And like exciting for an essay that's about like what excites you academically. So yeah.
And how did you decide to apply early to Yale? I know that Yale's one of the schools with probably the most supplements. So
yeah,
I mean, was that overwhelming to you? Did that affect your decision to want to apply early? Obviously, probably not, because you did apply early, but how did you ultimately decide like, I'm gonna apply early to Yale?
So Yale was a school that I sort of knew from, I did a debate competition maybe like in 2015 at Yale. And since then I'd sort of been really drawn to the school. I knew I wanted to apply either early action or regular decision. But I ended up choosing to apply early because I just feel like if you are very clear with the school, the way that like I was with Yale, it does show your commitment that like I am willing to, apply in this early round and like commit to the school if I get in. So that was sort of my reasoning. I definitely, like you said, like we had 3 weeks to do the essays because I wasn't sure if I didn't feel at that point that I had like everything else ready to submit, but genuinely, like, you can get it done. Like if you commit to it, you put everything together, put all your effort into it, like you can finish it in time. Yeah.
I just remembered that you did YYGS. So do you think that that played a role in your decision to apply early to Yale as well?
Yeah, I definitely think it did. I did my interview actually on campus at Yale while I was there. So YYGS is the Yale Young Global Scholars summer program. There are different sort of like courses you can take. I did literature, philosophy, and culture. And I just think it was honestly one of the best summer programs I've ever done. It was very full on, like there was a lot going on. There were lectures with like Yale faculty and seminars with like Yale graduate students. But I think the people that I met on that program really showed me that like you can connect with people intellectually who are super excited about the things that you want to do. And like you feel excited about what they're doing. Like it goes both ways kind of thing. And I think being in that environment where I didn't feel like everything was super competitive, which I think, you know, often at times you can have at high school. I just felt like it was like the place that I wanted to apply the most. Yeah, and I think I was able to meet like a lot of students while I was on campus and talk to them about their experiences. And that sort of also played a factor in my decision.
I know you did other summer programs as well. Why don't you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, so I did, so last year I did YYGS. The year before that, I did a summer program at NYU Tisch School of the Arts. I did the dramatic writing program, which was a 4-week program where you do screenwriting and playwriting classes. Up until that point, I had never really written like a play or, you know, a short film, any of those kind of things. I'd mainly just done acting. And it gave me the chance to work with people who had all the experience that I'd had like in acting. They had that experience in writing. So I was surrounded with people who were really, really good at what they were doing. And then I got the chance to connect with like the Tisch professors who I still speak to as like mentors. They were like amazing. I loved the program. And I actually wrote a play on that program that then like continued into the rest of my application. Like I then submitted it to festivals and yeah, I think the main thing with doing summer programs is not just to do them like obviously for the experience, but I think it's also to show like continuity and to show that like you did this program, what did I learn from it? This is how I'm adapting it to other parts of like my life now that I'm back, that sort of thing. Yeah.
The play that you're referring to was Blank Slate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think made your application unique? I know that you utilized the additional information section, and you talked about Blank Slate and a few other things in the additional information section. So why don't you talk about like, I guess, that section and what you think made your application unique as a whole?
So I think as a whole, it was probably unique in the sense that I did have a few like professional experiences in sort of the theater film realm. And I think that like more so stemmed from like just like my commitment and like genuine interest in like the field. I think one thing that's important is like, don't do things just like for the application. That was advice that I got from actually from a Hale student from 2 years ago. He's now at Stanford. He told me that find what you're really passionate about and then just do like as much as you can in that field. Like that's going to be fun for you. And it's also just going to be fun. Like it's going to look good later on when you then reflect like as part of your application. So that was the main thing that I would say. And then, yeah, like you said, additional information. I think people often overlook this. It's sort of that there's 650 words to write your Common App essay, and then underneath that on the Common App, there's another 650 words to write. It just says like you can write about anything. It's just additional information. I used every single word of that additional information section, just because I think it gave me the chance to speak about those like professional experiences in a professional way. Like I was able to talk about the play and the festival and like traveling to do the show that I had written and directed in a way that wasn't like stylized for a college essay. It was very just like, this is what happened. This was like the media coverage, these kind of things. I was able to talk about YYGS. There was like a short documentary film I shot while at YYGS. I was able to talk about that and the sort of reviews it got from the Yale faculty. I was able to talk about the National Youth Theatre, which is a theatre company in the UK that I'm a member of, and I train and act with them. I was able to write about those things in a like concise and, like I said, like professional way. That sort of, I just think I didn't want to write about those things in my essays, because I think, like I said, essays are for personality and for like more of the fun stuff. I thought this was like a good place to put those things. So if you've done things like that, I definitely recommend like using that section.
Yeah, definitely. Because as you know, for the activity section of the Common App, you only have like 150 characters including spaces and punctuation, which definitely isn't enough for you. And I would say it's definitely not enough just for anyone. So I think utilizing that additional information section is really good to highlight your strengths and to further elaborate on like your accomplishments. So how about extracurriculars? Can you tell us more about your extracurriculars, what you've been involved in throughout high school, and do you think quality is more important than quantity?
Okay, so I have my Common App in front of me because I didn't want to forget anything. But the main sort of thing I did was I mainly spoke about the things related to theater and related to the humanities as my like top sort of extracurriculars. So the first thing was, like I said, the National Youth Theatre. I'm an overseas school ambassador for them. So I've been training with them, like I said. That's more of like an international project. Secondly, I talked about this in one of my essays, Action DXB, which was a volunteering project sort of that I founded and that I'm directing. It basically is a project that once a week goes and works on drama and like movement classes with working women in the labor camps in the UAE. I just thought it was a great way to bring theater into the community, show how important it is, and use it as like a vessel for like self-expression, for confidence, things like that. It definitely made me feel like I was connecting more with my community, which is why I wrote about it as one of my essays, because it was very significant to me. Like I said, YYGS, the Tisch program. At school, I was a prefect, so sort of student government, I guess that goes under. I was a part of Philosophy Society, and I talked about how I joined and then did presentations, and then eventually became student president. I think that growth is really important to show. It's more impressive. I definitely feel like it'd be more impressive to show that there are stages to getting to wherever you are now, as opposed to just suddenly being like, I'm the head of this and this. It just shows that you're more human again, and like it just makes it look more realistic. And then I was in choir throughout high school. I was in senior and chamber choir, and I traveled with choir, for competitions and for performances, which was really, really fun. And then I talked about sports. So I did netball throughout high school, except for like senior year. I used to do debate. So I talked about debate for a bit. I used to do competitions, and I talked about boxing as well, which is another sport that I used to do. Yeah.
And one of your 35-word essays for Yale was about boxing, right? Wasn't it the first one?
Yeah, the question was, what inspires you? Yeah, and then I talked about boxing as like a metaphor for like making an impact, that sort of idea. Yeah.
Very smart, very witty. How about your personal statement? I just remembered your personal statement was very flawless, very creative. And I know that it was very long at first, and it took a while for us to like cut it down to 650 words. So was it difficult to brainstorm the topic and really solidify that topic? How did you brainstorm and decide that this was what I was going to write about?
So like I said earlier, I'm definitely more of like a visual person. I need to have like big mind maps and things to plan these sort of things out. So I think my Common App essay actually took the longest to plan, because I think I had so many ideas for it, but I just didn't know how it linked to like a like impactful story that summarized like my experiences so far. And I ended up trying to break it down in a way where for each paragraph, once I'd written them out, I wanted to sort of have one word that I could use to summarize it. So for example, like with the first paragraph, I was like, okay, this shows that I'm someone who's who values like creativity, because I wrote about like dancing at like a wedding, not wedding, at like Eid or something like that. I wrote about Pakistan for this essay. There's another paragraph that I was like, okay, leadership, because it talks about like something to do with film. Then the next I basically tried to come up with a trait or like a characteristic that each paragraph sort of presented. I think that's quite important, because you know, admissions officers are trying to summarize, right? Like there's a lot of information and they're trying to cut things down. So yeah, it was difficult cutting my essay down, because I did just want to just write and then see where it went. But yeah, I think once I nitpicked in the way where I just had themes for each paragraph, that definitely helped. And I definitely would suggest doing that.
Do you have any like advice or suggestions in terms of how to prepare the supplemental essays or the personal statement, how to brainstorm for it, or just like beyond brainstorming, the editing process? Any tips for that?
So I think for brainstorming first, try not to think too much about how an admissions officer would view this. Like just write ideas of things that you genuinely are interested in or that have genuinely impacted you. And like, I promise there are ways to write about things that then have that impact. And then in terms of, what was the second part? Sorry. Brainstorming the essays and then like, cutting down.
Editing and like cutting down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the editing process is definitely like lengthier than more, like it just takes way longer than the actual writing. So try not to I know I was someone who would like write a draft and then delete it and be like, okay, like I don't like how that read. Try not to do that. Just like get something on paper. We did maybe like 10, 12 I don't even know how many drafts of my essays. But yeah, I think that's like very important to just know that it's going to be more like the editing process is definitely more taxing than the writing process. So just bear that in mind. Yeah.
Do you advise showing your essays to multiple people or just to a few people? Like what did you personally do from your experience?
I tried my best to show just a few people. Like I literally only showed you for advice with like, does this read correctly? Is my grammar okay? Like, is my formatting okay? And then I showed my sisters. I have 3 sisters, but like 2 of them are older, so they could read them. My 2 sisters read through them and sort of, the main thing I asked them was like, is this my voice? Like, does this sound like me? And they're 14, they're very blunt. Like they were like, nope, that doesn't sound like you. Or like, yeah, that's like so your voice, that really shines through. I'm really lucky to have them like around to be reading those essays. But yeah, I definitely say try and limit it down, because again, if you get too many people reading your essays, which can definitely seem tempting, you can lose that element of authenticity. You can lose your voice, sort of, if you let too many people tell you like what to do. I definitely say write the essay and then show people. Like it's I think it's like, yeah, counterproductive to just get someone to help you write the essay. That's not how, it's not going to be,
Good advice, very good advice. And do you have like any advice beyond the essays for those who are applying this coming year?
My main thing would be have the faith in yourself that it'll work out, and try not to make it, I know it's easier saying this on the other end of the process, but it's not as daunting as it seems. It is a lot, but you learn so much about yourself through the essays, through actually getting the opportunity to reflect. I watched a couple of the other Ivy Insider panelists like speak, like the podcasts, and this seems to be unanimous, like with everyone. It is maybe the first time you get to reflect on experiences that you've had in high school. like usually everything just seems to be like a blur, like you're just constantly on this like go 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 sort of mentality. It's a great time to just reflect on those things that you've done, link your experiences together, and like paint a picture of yourself in a way that you think like summarizes you best. I think the more you are to being open about like learning about yourself, as opposed to like trying to make yourself look like this perfect applicant, the more you are going to stand out, because you seem self-aware and you seem more confident. And yeah, I think that's definitely what, if I was an admissions officer, that's what I'd want to see. So yeah.
Is there anything that you would have done differently in your application?
I think I would have tried, like I said, be more on top of my deadlines. I think sometimes I would just get a bit stressed out. I never missed anything. Just gonna make that clear. I definitely think I owe that to you though. Like you were on top of things, but I think, yeah, like I said, just having faith in myself from the beginning, because I did stress myself out and feel like, I don't know if I can apply early. I don't know if I have the grades. I don't know, not the grades, but I just didn't know if I had everything perfectly like together. And it's not about being like perfect. It's about showing who you are. Yeah.
Right. And just, this is my last question, and then we'll go to Q&A. So what have you learned overall from this experience working with Hale, or just overall from the whole college application process?
I think I've gained a lot of like I said, reflection on where I am currently in life and like what I've done to get to this stage. But I think also articulating everything in like essays and writing things down on my Common App. I've learned about what sort of I see myself doing in the future. I also think I learned so much about time management, and so much about just, I think when I was applying, I had a lot going on. Like, of course, first semester of senior year is like a lot. There's like, I had the play and traveling with the play. Then there were exams at school. You know, these things are always like constantly happening. I think learning that you need to make the time for these things that are like very important to you, and then doing so was like something I definitely learned. And learning that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Like you don't have to make it stressful. It can actually be a really enjoyable process where you learn a lot about yourself.
Was the Short and Sweet Festival during like application season?
So the festival ran, it started, I think, February 2019, the Dubai round. That spanned throughout February, March, that sort of time. And after the Dubai round, the round in LA started September. So yeah, I like end of September into October. So it was literally like everything was happening at the same time. But yeah, I think prioritizing things correctly definitely was helpful.
That must have been very stressful for you.
Yeah, I think I have a great support system. So I just had like family constantly being like, no, like you got this, it's okay, you can do it.
So how are you able to deal with like the stress and with everything going on? I guess that'll be my last question before Q&A.
Okay. I think I just made sure I was voicing when I was stressed. It's very easy to sort of bottle these things up and think you're going through it alone, but really like everyone at my school was going through it as well. I felt like I could speak to my parents or my sisters or you even about, you know, feeling overwhelmed and then like actually taking action to change that. So I would say just make sure you're voicing these things.
So let's move on to question and answers. I think we do have a few questions in the chat.
We have more than a few, and thank you so much. That was amazing, Daliya. Incredible.
Thank you.
Wow, very genuine. Your voice is being heard now very loudly and proudly. Very insightful information. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your advice. Both are very useful, I'm sure, for everyone who is attending this webinar. We have lots of really great questions. Most of them are from anonymous attendees, but we have one attendee who's not anonymous, Inner Space Dubai. So Inner Space, I will unmute your mic and you can ask your question directly to Daliya. So give me 1 second if I can do that. Yes. I think you are now live. Please ask away.
Hi, Daliya. Very inspiring. It's really, really nice to hear directly from you.
Thank
The
you.
question that we have is how long back did you really start thinking about your college admission? When did it enter your mind, this as a possibility?
Okay. So I started, I guess, more tangibly thinking about the admissions process maybe like March or April of my junior year. I think I had taken sort of the SAT and the ACT, sorry, December of my junior year. So in terms of testing earlier, but I started planning my Common App essay and trying to start my Common App like action online towards the end of my junior year, just because it gave me the time all throughout summer, and then I had that time to get sort of a head start, because the beginning of senior year is like there's just a lot going on. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's an excellent segue into the next question. What did you write about in your Common App essay, your personal statement?
Okay, so I wrote about it was sort of about Pakistan and how my love for the arts has sort of grown through like Pakistani tradition and like dance and things like that, and just like performance in general. And then I talked about the phrase "log kya kahenge," which means "what will people think." It's something that I've spoken to like a lot of my friends who are also Pakistani or Indian, and they've all been like, this is a thing you hear like a lot about how are people sort of going to view you. And I talked about that phrase, and instead of seeing it as, instead of letting it come at me from a place of fear or a place of like shame, I sort of interpreted it into my own way of saying, how do I want what I want my audiences to think when I like present a play, or how do I want people to view like the meaningful work that I'm putting out like into the world. It was sort of that idea, and using this phrase that conventionally isn't a positive thing as a catalyst to drive my work and drive the things that I'm passionate about. So that was sort of that essay.
Wonderful. Very good. We have another great question. It's for you, Daliya, but I think Ariane, you can offer a little bit of insight here as well. The question is, were you ever intimidated by any part of the admissions process? If so, which one? And what did you do to calm yourself down and move forward? So how did, Daliya, were you intimidated, and how did you deal with that intimidation?
Okay, so I think I was sort of intimidated by the testing element of admissions. I felt like I was seeing a lot of people around me. I think DC is like quite a competitive school at times, have very, very high test scores and very high subject test scores. And I felt like that was sort of quite daunting to me. I did end up submitting a score that I was very happy with. But yeah, I think the main thing with that is to realize that, and I realized this through speaking to admissions officers, and through hearing from them directly, testing is such a small part of the application. Like I think it's so much more exciting to see a student who has really engaging and like exciting extracurriculars and like actual life experience than someone who has very high test scores and nothing really to show for it other than that. So yeah, that was sort of how I approached that.
I can't agree with you more there. Ariane, what advice do you have for students that are feeling maybe overwhelmed or anxious by the process? How do you help them cope with those emotions effectively?
Well, I definitely felt those emotions back in, was it I can't remember. It was a couple years ago when I applied. But I think I was very intimidated by like the numbers, and I asked like about the blogs earlier because I was someone who would always read the College Confidential blog and just compare myself to people who posted there. So my advice would be just to focus on yourself and your strengths and your own application, and don't compare yourself to others, because by doing so that'll diminish your self-esteem. And I think if you just focus solely on your application, that'll help you put in the best application that you can.
Excellent. Any good stress relieving tips from either of you? Any productive ways to let off steam?
Meditate, definitely do that. Yeah.
Ariane, you agree?
I agree. I also went I like to dance, so I also went to dance with my friends, and that would also calm me down.
Amazing. Very good. Excellent. I have another great question here about the Yale supplements, asking specifically Daliya about the person you would invite, I think, to dinner, what inspires you, and what qualities would you impart to your roommates?
Okay. So for the person I would invite, I spoke about Akshay Sharan, who is a actor that I watched live in. So I linked this to the National Youth Theatre. I'd watched a performance that they'd put on of The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which is my favorite book ever. That play is sort of, if for those of you who don't know, it's about like a Pakistani immigrant in the US and his life pre and post 9/11. And my question to him, I think I probably have it with me, but I think it was something like, how can we evolve a world gripped by fear through performance? And sort of how you can use theater or film for like social change, those kind of ideas. Yeah. And then I think there was another one about the roommate essay. This is what I wrote the haiku poem for. I just had like 3 little stanzas that basically, the summary of that essay was, I would want to write like a tiny short little haiku poem like every day for my roommates, just to like reflect on like my college experience, like each day. This is something I actually want to do. I think it'd be really fun. And yeah, I did that in a way that I think was probably creative and like fun to read. So yeah.
Incredible.
I actually did that haiku thing at Harvard. I did a haiku every day at Harvard.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know.
Yeah, and I had like an Instagram dedicated to that haiku page, but then I deleted it. But I saved all the haikus.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I still
Yeah,
have
I think
it.
I'm gonna actually try and do that.
You should. It's creative, and also it's like a de-stressor from all like the work that you'll experience.
Yeah.
I don't think I've written a haiku since elementary school, and probably then I was forced to just one time. Amazing. Incredible. Excellent. Another great question here. Can you talk about your interview at Yale? Was it on campus? Was it here with an alum? And what was that like? Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the interview, that they're there to assess your intelligence or academic achievement. Was that your experience, or was it something different?
So I did my interview on campus while I was there for YYGS. I honestly did not know what to expect. I saw people around me really, really stressing about the interview. I think it's really easy to overthink what, the interview is going to be like. I remember sitting outside the room, like waiting to go in, and there were kids with flashcards like about themselves who were like skim reading through books. And I was just sitting there like, oh, like I didn't really prepare much. And the lady who interviewed me was so sweet. She literally walked up to me and was like, oh, I love what you're wearing. Like, let's go. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And like, she was just so casual and really nice, and like was just really genuinely interested in learning about what I am interested in. Like, that was it. It wasn't about what's your test score? What is this? Like, what do you do academically? And like, how is this achievement like shaped you? Like, this wasn't that kind of thing. It was like, so what do you do for fun? Like, what did you, one of my friends got asked, what did you have for lunch, like just before coming here? And like things, like it was really casual. Honestly, the most difficult question I was asked was, what do you think makes a great artist? Like, it linked really well with what we were talking about, because we were talking about playwriting, and we were talking about like philosophers and how it sort of philosophy links to theater. And that was a great question, not because like it was difficult to come up with something. It was just hard because it allowed me to reflect on, okay, what do I actually value in like another artist, like that sort of thing. I think it was, again, an opportunity to reflect. And I think, yeah, it's definitely not as daunting as a lot of people make it out to seem. At the end of my interview, she said like, oh, I just wish we could be friends. And I was like, that's so sweet. Like, it was just really nice. Like, it was a nice chat with someone, just like really informally. Yeah.
Amazing. Ariane, what advice do you have to your students to prepare for the interview, whether it's at Yale or any other institution?
So I'm actually an interviewer for Georgetown, and I think my advice would be to do a mock interview first, either preferably with someone that you don't know, and also make a list, like a bullet point list of maybe 5 to 7 things that you for sure want to say or bring up in your interview. I don't recommend like writing out full sentences and memorizing that, because the interviewer will be able to tell if you give memorized answers. I have experienced this in interviews before. So just make a brief bullet point list of things that for sure you'd like to mention, whether it's activities or projects, academics, etc.
Amazing. I have a follow-up question. As a former interviewer for Hopkins many years ago, you know, for me, it's incredible. What I see is students focus on rankings and reputation, and they have those facts memorized. But really, the interviewers are looking for the qualitative factors, right? Why the university is a good fit for you. You want to stay away from rankings and those types of conversations. So for you, Daliya, and for everybody who's here, maybe thinking about applying to Yale or anywhere else, how did you answer maybe it was the first question. So why are you applying to Yale, or why are you interested in applying to Yale?
So I actually was not asked anything specifically about Yale, which I found like I had a Georgetown interview like early December, and I was asked that question. But yeah, I wasn't asked it in my Yale interview, but I had looked up prior to the interview what sort of things the interviewer would write down afterwards, like what there were 2 boxes, I think. One was about like how, like you said, how do you see the student like fitting in on campus at the university, and the second one was, I think, like something to do with like personality or something like that. I just tried to bear that in mind, and I did try to link some of my answers to Yale. So I did talk about like how theater is like something I'm really passionate about, and how I talked specifically about how a lot of the shows Yale's put on are shows that the National Youth Theater has put on. And I was like, the link between the two, like I've realized that the sort of theatrical environment that I've been a part of, and that like the NYT fosters, Yale sort of, you know, does the same. And I was like, I love that connectivity. So I just tried to link things that I had like tangible things to show for, like my extracurriculars, things like that, to reasons why I'd be a good fit, you know, for the university. That was my biggest thing.
Incredible. Excellent. We have a fantastic question from Ashwin. Ashwin, I am going to unmute you and allow you to ask your question directly to both Daliya and Ariane. So I'm trying to unmute you. You have to let me. Very good. Thank you, Ashwin.
Okay. This is not Ashwin. This is Ashwin's father.
Okay. Ashwin's dad. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Congratulations, Daliya, for a fantastic
Thank
achievement.
you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So my question is, you know, I've been listening to most of these interviews of the students who are selected. Most of them, almost all of them, are very good speakers, good debaters. Okay. What advice would you give to such students who are quite introvert and you know, who are quite shy to speak in public? So what sort of advice would you give to such students?
Okay. So I just want to say I was the shyest kid growing up. I know it doesn't seem it now, because now I can just like talk for ages, but that definitely came with practice. And I also think it's very important to know that schools are not just looking for super extroverted like kids who are always leaders. Like, you're just gonna have a class of kids who are all like super like dominant over each other and like butting heads. The universities are trying to build a class. So I don't think you know, sometimes you see with us as like people who are being interviewed, we do seem quite like confident or like extroverted, but genuinely I have very close friends who've gotten in who are introverted, but like they show that personality through those essays, or they, you know, you can still be a very impressive applicant and not be the most like confident person at speaking or public speaking. If every single kid was like an amazing public speaker or an amazing debater, there would be no like diversity within a class. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I don't think you have to be an extrovert at all to get into these schools.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, I've recorded this, and I'll be definitely, asking Ashwin to listen to this. It will be a great motivator. Thank you.
Thank you. For everybody else that also would like to watch this webinar or any of our other, I think 10 webinars, they are available on our Facebook page and on our website, www.haleeducation.com, so you can access the entire series there. Wonderful. We do have time for a couple more questions. Let's see which, oh, this is a good one. Two-part question for you, Daliya. Which A-levels did you take, and did you also consider universities in the UK?
Okay, so I took maths A-level, I took English literature, and I took drama. I think this links to the whole quality over quantity thing. I was really, really invested in these 3 subjects. I really enjoyed them. And I think that was reflected in my grades throughout the year. I did not apply to the UK. I was considering it, but I just think I saw myself, I think I was better suited for the US because I don't think I could go in to university in the UK just doing one thing. I'm definitely someone who needs to have that time to explore a bit. And I think, I have that flexibility with the US. Yeah.
A lot of students, especially from British curriculum schools like yours, right? Dubai College is a British curriculum school.
Yeah.
Think about applying to both, typically do apply to both. Some have a strong preference for one, destination over the other, but you were clear that the US was for you. Why?
I think, again, this links to sort of having that space and that freedom to explore what major I wanted to do. I also know that I definitely want to do theater or film and philosophy. Like I want to have the ability to do both parallel to each other. I think the US sort of fosters that environment where you have the space to do so, but also you can take classes that are interdisciplinary, and I think I'm excited about sort of that prospect. Yeah, so that was my main thing for the US. I also just think I connect really well, like with the professors I had met who are at US universities. I think I connected with them better, and I could see myself at those universities more than I could see myself in the UK.
Excellent. We have a question from Aaliyah. Aaliyah, I will ask you or allow you to talk, and you can ask your question directly to Daliya. Aaliyah, are you there? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so I'll just read Aaliyah's question out. How long were you with Hale, and how long did you think about this process? We talked about when you thought about applying, but how did you view this process over what time period?
Okay, I think I joined Hale at the end of year 10. So I had year 11, year 12, year 13 with Hale. And I think in terms of like when this college process started, I was definitely like making the most of the resources at Hale when applying to my summer programs too, which I think is like a great way, not just because the experience is great of a college like experience like for the summer. I also just think the application process for these summer schools often mimic that of like actual college applications. It's a great way to like get into the habit of writing those essays and understanding sort of how they work, while then obviously also understanding how life works like on campus when you're actually there like during the summer. So I think Hale definitely helped me with that, and with like organization, time management for those kind of things. Yeah.
Excellent. Ariane, when do you think's the best time to start?
As early as possible. I mean, I was just talking with Angie, and she says that she has 7th grade students now. So as early as possible, if you're thinking about colleges already, and if you want to apply to the States, that's or Canada, we do help students apply to Canada as well. I have students who have applied to the UK, and I look over their personal statement too, but I do say, like, I do agree with you that we mostly focus on the US and Canada.
Right, and the UK is a little bit of a different process, which is
Yeah.
highly academic, one personal statement. They're not too concerned about your extracurriculars, where in the US, it's a 4-year process in terms of your profile, your experiences, your summer activities, leadership. They care about who you are and how you've developed, right? In the UK, it's who you are as a student. In the US, it's who you are as a student and who you are as a human being, which is very important. Excellent. I think we're going to close out with one more interesting question here that we're going to combine a couple questions. Daliya, you know, a lot of students in Dubai complain that there are not a lot of opportunities, you know, outlets for their extracurricular interests, whether it's in the school or in the city, but you were very proactive in seeking out opportunities, but also creating opportunities. So what advice do you have for students who may have those same complaints and think there's not enough to do? You know, how can I get involved? You know, how are you able to navigate those waters?
Yeah. So I actually think you are at such an advantage if these sort of opportunities are not around you, because like you said, you can create them. Like if you see you know, space for a project to be made, go out there and do it, because that's super impressive. It shows that you're proactive. It shows that like you're really genuinely passionate and committed to what you're into. It doesn't have to be arts related. It can be, you know, entrepreneurship related, STEM related. But also, I think the UAE is a great place to be in terms of these sort of things, because you are the big fish in the small pond, like that sort of idea. It's a lot easier to get recognition or to get sort of, you know, coverage, I guess, on like what you're doing in this region, as opposed to being like maybe the best in like California or like a state where, you know, you have lots and lots of kids who are also, you know, fighting for these positions. But there are always things like up and coming here. I think there are constantly things being made. With Short and Sweet, which was the theater festival that my play was in, that literally came from just walking around and like seeing. I watched it a couple years ago, and then I didn't even think about submitting a play to it until I was walking around like Al Sakal, and I just saw like a poster for it, and then I went and spoke to the festival director. Like opportunities just pop up. And if they're not, and if you're waiting around, start something. Like there's always the space to do so here, especially.
Amazing. Closing thoughts for those students who would love to be featured on the panel next year, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now.
I think my biggest advice for those students would be trust. I've said this so many times, trust in yourself. And don't fixate on what you think the perfect application is. There is no perfect application. An application is not about showing how you are like the very, very best. It's about showing who you are, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, and where you see yourself heading. I think that's sort of my biggest piece of advice. Also, like Ariane said earlier, focus on your own path. Everyone is at different stages in their journey. You don't know, like some people present that like, I'm doing this, this, and this. You don't know what's going on like beneath the surface. So know that it's so important to just focus on your own path.
Incredible. Ariane, do you concur?
I definitely agree. I think that it's important to be authentic, and your authenticity should show in your essays, in every aspect of your application. Don't lie. And what I liked about what Daliya said earlier regarding her essays, I like that she said she only showed a few people, and I like that she showed her sisters, because her sisters were the ones who like confirmed like, this is your voice. I think it's so important for your essays to be your own voice, your own authentic voice. And if you try so hard to sound like someone else, that'll be noticeable. And also it just wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be like the best application that you could put forward. So I definitely liked all of Daliya's essays, because I could tell her, I could see her personality and her passion shine through all her essays.
Incredible. I would just like to add one additional thought. don't try to reverse engineer the process. So many times students come and think, I need to tick this box. I need to do MUN. I should do debating, Will this help me get in? Don't worry about what's going to help you get in. Worry about what interests you, how you can make the most of those interests, how you can create opportunities, as Daliya said, right? And again, as Ariane said, be true to yourself. That is the best that you can do, not only in terms of putting together a successful application, but living a happy and fulfilled life, which is also very important. So with that, thank you very, very much, Ariane, and thank you, Daliya. That was an incredible session. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And if anybody would like to learn more about us, please visit our website, haleeducation.com. We'd be happy to have a free initial consultation with you. With that, thanks, and have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.